Hey everybody, Barrett here with Spec of Tech. Welcome to the channel. I recently released a video about two monster subwoofers from Tonewinner, the D8000 Pro and the D9000. If you guys want to check out that video, I'll link it in the top right hand corner. But today's video is going to be the review of the D9000. So we're going to have a look at its performance and its output. I did measure them in my room with Room EQ Wizard or RU. So I'm going to show you guys what the output or SPL levels were of the D9000 in my room. We're also going to talk about the build quality and have a look at the Tonewinner Subwoofer app, because you can connect this to an app on your phone so that you can change all of the settings with that app, which is very convenient, especially for a large subwoofer like this that gets pushed up against your wall and you're not really going to have access to the back of the amp to make changes. So that app is incredibly handy. I did talk about all the specs and the dimensions in the overview video, which I already did mention. I linked in the top right hand corner. But to put it simply, the D9000 is an 18-inch driver subwoofer with 1500 watts RMS and 9000 watts peak. As I already discussed in the overview video, this subwoofer is only available in a black ash vinyl wrap. It is kept to a price point. They are on the budget side of things for the high output category. So you're not going to get things like premium aesthetics, typically speaking anyway, when you're keeping things at a price point like this, what subwoofer is, which is currently priced at $3,199 Canadian dollars, which works out to about $2,300 US dollars at the time of this recording. But what you are getting is a well-built subwoofer. It is 191 pounds, so it is pretty hefty with that MDF cabinet. And you do have those two handles on the side, which I know is going to be polarizing. Some of you will hate the fact that it has handles on the side, but it is very helpful for a subwoofer of this size and this weight, especially for getting it into place. Once you get it into place, they're kind of not really needed anymore, but I do applaud Tonewinner for including handles for such a hefty subwoofer. Now, whether or not you like the look of that or whether or not you like the aesthetic of it having handles is completely subjective. So I know there's some of you that won't mind it. There is some of you that aren't going to like it. One thing that I would have liked to have seen with this subwoofer is a magnetic grill, but again, it is kept to a price point, so you have a peg and grommet style grill, but at least it does come with a grill if you want to cover up those 6 ports on the front, and that's another thing that I believe is going to be pretty polarizing. Some of you aren't going to mind the fact that it has those 6 ports on the front, and I know that some of you have already made comments about how it doesn't look very nice. So again, it's going to be subjective whether or not you actually care about the 6 ports on the front or whether or not you think it looks good, but there are those 6 ports on the front, so keep that in mind. The driver itself is very robust. I believe it was 48 or almost 49 pounds for this 18-inch driver. It's a treated paper cone, but it's got a ton of output. It's got a 26 millimeter X-Max, so it is a decent driver, and at 48 pounds it does have a nice motor structure on it, and the output is going to attest to that, which we'll get to in a little bit. But I do feel that the driver, especially for the price point, is a nice, robust, well-built driver. And the same goes for the amplifier on the back. I do like the fact that it has a lit up LCD screen so that you can see whatever changes you're making on the amplifier. Again, most of you are going to be pushing this up against the wall, so you're not going to be able to see the LCD screen or the amplifier. So it's incredibly handy that Tonewinner has included connectivity for their Tonewinner subwoofer app. I've had several of these Tonewinner subwoofers in my setup for the past several months, as I've been doing reviews on the D6000 and the D4000 and even the D2000, and I haven't had any issues with any of the drivers or any of the amplifiers. So far, they have stood the test of time, and I do push these subwoofers, guys, especially for demos and measuring. I'm pushing them to their limits, and so far, so good. I haven't had any issues. And the same goes for the D9000. In this case, I haven't had any issues. It connects to the app, no problem. And it's nice to see that Tonewinner does release updates for their subwoofers and the app on a regular basis. So it would appear that they plan on supporting their subwoofers and the app into the future, because they have been so far. So when you launch the Tonewinner subwoofer app, you're going to have the option of which subwoofer you want to control the settings on. So in this case, I have the D8000 Pro and the D9000. So just for fun, we'll select the D8000 Pro, and then it's going to connect to that subwoofer and load the settings. So at the top, you can see that you have your control for your gain. In this case, it calls it volume, but really that's your gain. And then you have your low pass filter, which you can turn on or bypass. And then you can set the frequency which you want your low pass filter to be set at. I choose to bypass it because my receiver or my AVM90 processor is going to have its own low pass filter. And then below that, you have some other settings that you can change: the filter type, line phase, Butterworth, and that sort of thing. Back up to the main settings here, you have your high pass filter. So again, you can go as low as 10 Hertz, but you can adjust what you want your high pass filter to be. And then you have the high pass filter slope, so you can change that as well from 12 to 24. And I do have that set to 10 Hertz. Because I have it in deep mode. And then you have your EQ, which again, you can bypass or turn on. And then you have 7 PEQs here that you can set. You can set the frequency, the Q value, and the gain. And then you have your port tuning. So if you have it open, as in all the ports are open, you set it to open. And then if you have the port sealed with the included foam inserts, then you want to turn that to sealed. I have it on open, so it's in ported mode. And then you have your polarity, which you can change from 0 to 180, and your phase, which you can change from 0 to 180 as well, but in 10 degree increments. And you have your mode. So here's where you can select whether you're in normal mode, strong mode, or deep mode. And we're going to have a look in a minute at the roux measurements, at what the differences are between those modes. But normal is kind of the in-between. Strong, you're going to have a little bit more in the high end, but it's going to roll off more on the low end. Deep, you're going to have more low end. And then you have user, which is your own EQ settings. And then in the settings menu, you can adjust your off, or when the subwoofer automatically turns off from having no signal. I have mine set to 30 minutes right now, but I'm going to change that to 20. And then you have your wake up level, which is set to 0 dB. And you have little information buttons that you can press here that'll explain what these things do. So for those of you that don't know, you just press the little question mark and it's going to explain to you what that setting does. So then you have your auto on band time. Again, if you click the question mark, it says when the subwoofer is turned off via smartphone app, time frame parameter set under trigger on function will be invalid. The default time is 120 minutes. And then you have your input level match, so you can adjust the input level. As you can see here, you have 1, 1.4, 2.0, 2.8, and 4. And then you have your volume display, which is either going to be relative or normal. Then you can edit the name, which I just have this set to SWD8000 Pro, but you can adjust that and then just press confirm after when you're done. And then you have your firmware version. So mine is already, the MCU is set to the latest version, and then you can back up your settings there as well. And then lastly, you have reset, so you can reset this to the factory settings. That pretty much sums up the app. You can also turn the subwoofer on or off. In the top right-hand corner, you can see the on or off. So if I press it, then it's going to turn off, and then I can confirm that now the subwoofer is off. So as you can see, the Tonewinner subwoofer app does have a lot of useful functionality to it. I like the fact that you can set your own PEQs, so you can adjust the subwoofer on your own if you want to, or of course you can just use your room calibration software to calibrate that if you want as well. But it's nice to see that they have the options there. All right, before we get into the roux measurements of the subwoofer so I can show you what kind of SPL numbers we're dealing with, let's talk about the performance of the subwoofer because it's something that just really stands out. So when I hooked this subwoofer up and I played scenes like the race scene from Ready Player One or the opening scene of Blade Runner 2049, it's just something that really excited my room. It shook my room. The bass, I would explain it as violent. This is the type of subwoofer that's going to show you exactly where the vibrations are in your room, and it's going to show it to you in a violent way. It shakes absolutely everything in my room because I do have the Croson actuators under each of my seats. But even with those off, this subwoofer just offers a lot of tactile response, a lot of vibration and shake in my chair. And it's not something that you're going to get with smaller, lesser subwoofers like a single 15 or a single 12. Yes, you might get some tactile response. I'm not saying that you won't, but this is just on a whole other level. This excites your room on a whole other level. It's just so much more violent. So what do I personally think about the output of the subwoofer, especially if you're accounting for the price point of this subwoofer versus the competition? The output is exceptional. I've personally experienced a lot of different subwoofers in my room, ranging from around $500 to upwards of $10,000 to $11,000 subwoofers. And where that violent room shaking bass sort of lives is 105 dB and up. So if you have a subwoofer that's putting out 100 to 105 dB, you're going to get some good bass in your room. You are going to get some tactile response. You're going to get some good shake and some good rumble. But if you want that really dynamic, room shaking, violent bass, you want to live above that 105 dB range, so that you have that headroom, you have that dynamic headroom for the subwoofer to be able to hit those. And this is the type of subwoofer that can do that. It does have peaks approaching 120 dB, which is plenty of SPL, especially if you're going to buy two of these and put them in your room. You're not going to need to run them anywhere near full blast because it's just going to be too much bass. You want to have your bass somewhat balanced with the rest of your system. So you're going to have to trim it down a little bit, which is going to give you plenty of headroom. And this is what a subwoofer like this is great for. You get that headroom where you trim it down, and then in the dynamic scenes where they do have peaks that are 110 or maybe more dB, this subwoofer is going to be able to provide that for you, and it's going to give you that incredibly violent shake that only a subwoofer of this caliber, of this type of performance can give you. Okay, enough talk about the performance. Let's have a look at the room measurements so I can show you guys what I was experiencing in my room. So for those of you that aren't aware, REW stands for Room EQ Wizard, and it's a software that you can measure the SPL for a specific space. So in this case, it is my room. I measured the subwoofer in the front right-hand corner without any room calibration, and I did not calibrate the subwoofer or use any PEQs on it. It is just factory settings, and I did test it in normal mode, strong mode, and deep mode. So we're going to have a look at that and see how this subwoofer stacks up. All right, so first of all, let's have a look at the D9000 in deep mode, strong mode, and normal. As you can see in deep mode, this red line here, it does have a little bit more low end. The blue line here is normal, so it's kind of in between the two. And then in strong mode, you have the least amount of low end on this green line here. In the upper frequencies, it doesn't affect it as much. You can see that the red line here, which is deep mode, you do sacrifice some of the higher frequencies versus normal mode and strong mode. So strong mode being the green one here, you do get a little bit more output in the higher frequencies, but not much over the normal mode. So for me, I do prefer the normal mode. It's kind of just the best of both worlds. But that's in the ported configuration. Let's have a look at the same thing in the sealed configuration. So here we have the D9000 sealed -27 volume, sealed strong, and sealed normal. So again, you can see pretty much the exact same idea here. In strong mode, you're getting a little bit more in the higher frequencies. In normal mode, you're kind of getting the best of both worlds in between, although it isn't as drastic as in the ported configuration. And then in deep mode, you are getting the most amount of low end. There's a bigger difference here than it was in the ported configuration. And you still do get quite a bit up to like the 50 hertz range, where it starts to lose a little bit more versus the other ones. You also do get a slower roll off in sealed mode. As you can see here, it doesn't drop quite as quickly as it does in the ported configuration. But let's have a look at the compression testing now. We'll start off in ported configuration. So -27 in normal mode, 24, 21, 18, 15, and 12. So on 15, we're not getting any compression, but on 12, you are getting some slight compression, especially in the lower end here. It looks like maybe you're losing half a dB or a dB in some areas. Even though it's very slight compression, we will call that compression. For the interest of comparison, we'll use -15 as our max output in the ported configuration in normal mode. Now let's have a look at the same thing in sealed. So -27 in sealed, 24, 21, 18, 15, 12, and 9. So let's just get rid of this -15 just to help us see the compression. And we'll just have to remember that in ported mode it was -15. So you're clearly getting compression here at -9, so we can't use that line. That's very obvious compression. At -12, it's still looking very linear. I don't think I see any compression. Let's see if I made any notes here. No, I didn't note any compression. So -12 in sealed mode is going to be our max output, and -15 in ported. So here you have the max output between sealed mode and ported mode. And you do start to get a little bit more in the sealed configuration, starting at about 13 hertz. It branches off here. So you do get that slower roll off that I was talking about a little bit earlier, but it's not a huge deal. Like it only starts to affect at 13 hertz, like I said. And other than that, you're getting mostly very similar output. You're going to most likely cross this over somewhere around 80 hertz. But as you can see, in sealed mode, you do get a little bit more in these upper frequencies, but not a huge difference because you are going to be crossing it over, like I said. So between 80 and somewhere around 28 hertz, you're pretty much the same between the two configurations, ported and sealed. But in the ported configuration, you do get quite a bit more in this low end here. For example, at 20 hertz, you are looking at a massive 113 dB. And in sealed mode, you're getting about 107. So that's going to be a very noticeable difference at 20 hertz. And then even at 15 hertz, let's have a look. So at 15 hertz, you're at 104 dB in ported. and you're at 101.26 in sealed mode. Although with sealed mode, it does have a slightly more linear response. You will be able to flatten that out a little bit better with room calibration. And again, guys, I don't want you to pay attention too much to these peaks and nulls. This is my room. This is not the subwoofer. So just remember that. You will be able to get a flat response with the subwoofer if you are going to calibrate it using room calibration. But I just wanted to show kind of the peak output numbers of the subwoofer. And as you can see at 32 Hertz, you are approaching 120 dB, so we're at about 117.3. So there's plenty of output here. And again, at 20 Hertz, you're still putting out 113 dB with a single subwoofer. That is a ton of output. This is what's giving you that extreme violent bass that I was talking about even in the introduction video, that these subwoofers are extreme. This is significant output, guys. You're going to feel this. This is a ton of output, especially for the price. So that's pretty impressive. Let's have a look at what the subwoofer looks like in deep mode, though. So with ported configuration and sealed configuration in deep mode. So let's get those numbers up here. All right, so starting in sealed, we have the subwoofer in sealed configuration in deep sound mode. So -27, -24, -21, 18, 15, 12, and 9. So 9, you're clearly getting compression because the brown line is touching the blue line here, so that we can't use that line. The blue line, you are getting some compression right here. It's not a whole lot, but it is enough that we'll call that compression as well. So we can't use 12, so we'll use 15 in sealed configuration in deep mode. And then in the ported configuration in deep mode, here's -27, 24, 21, 18, 15, and 12. And let's get rid of the sealed configuration at -15 just for now to help us see the compression. As you can see, this blue line is compressing. It's much closer to this green line than the other one, so we can't use -12. -15 is looking pretty linear. There's not a whole lot. If there is any compression, it's very, very slight and not really noticeable. So I think we're going to use -15 as our max output for the ported configuration. So it was -15 for both of these. And here you're kind of looking at the same thing as we just saw in the previous one with the normal mode. In the ported configuration, you are going to get much more output than the sealed configuration in the lower frequencies. So we're looking at 114 dB at 20 Hertz in the ported configuration, and still a whopping 106 basically dB at 15 Hertz. But in the sealed configuration, you're getting 100 dB, which is still a lot of output at 15 Hertz. For the subwoofer. And like I said, you do get that slower roll off in sealed mode, but it doesn't really take effect until the very lower frequencies, which isn't really going to affect you guys. Like, honestly, I would run this in ported mode because you're getting all this extra output here down to about 11 Hertz. It starts to deviate a little bit, but that's not really worth it to run it in sealed mode unless you just want that more linear response. But you can just flatten that out with room calibration. But the ported mode here in deep mode is pretty impressive, 114 dB at 20 Hertz. And then at the peak, about 32 Hertz, we're at 117.3 dB. So again, approaching 120 dB for peaks on this subwoofer is absolutely incredible. Again, like I stated in the introduction video, these subwoofers are extreme, the D9000 and the D8000 Pro, which make sure you stay tuned for the D8000 Pro review because I will be showing you measurements of that one as well. But it's pretty similar to this one. They are incredibly similar, but like I stated in the introduction video, the D8000 Pro does seem to punch a little bit harder, but has slightly less output in the low end. The D9000 does have slightly more output in the low end. And another video that I do plan on doing is comparing these subwoofers to some of the other subwoofers that I've measured in the exact same spot in my room. So I may compare this to the JTR Captivator 2400, and I've already had a look at the RU graphs, and guys, it's pretty surprising how well this subwoofer keeps up with the Captivator 2400 considering the price difference. And the same goes for the Arundel 1723 2V. This subwoofer is keeping up with those at a much less expensive price. So make sure you stay tuned for that video where I'm going to compare the RU measurements in the exact same spot in my room, so it's all comparable to these other subwoofers. and you'll see how these Tonewinner subwoofers are holding their own against these other more expensive subwoofers. But there you have it, guys. These are the room measurements. I hope that helps you understand kind of the output and what I was talking about with that extreme classification that I was giving these subwoofers. I hope this helps you understand that, but let's get back to the review video. I hope that you guys do find those room measurements helpful. I know that I do when I'm watching a subwoofer review to see what type of performance that they are getting. Now, of course, it is going to be somewhat specific to the room, but it does give you a general idea of how the subwoofer is going to perform. And as you saw from those measurements, the D9000 definitely has the performance. It's putting out a ton of output, and yes, it does start to roll off at 20 hertz. It doesn't mean that it doesn't have usable, violent output below 20 hertz, as we saw from the room measurements. So when it comes to performance, this subwoofer has it, and it has it for a relatively inexpensive price when you're looking at it compared to its competitors or compared to other subwoofers in this high output game. So what you're getting with the D9000 is what I believe a well-built subwoofer that has incredible performance. So I believe you truly are getting a good value with the D9000, an 18-inch driver with plenty of power, plenty of output. It's in that high performance, high output kind of category. If you guys are interested in checking out the subwoofer, I have dropped links down in the description below. Make sure that you do subscribe and tick the bell icon if you do, and please take just one short second to hit that like button. I always do appreciate it. I do have a review coming out of the Tonewinner D9000 Pro, which is another high output subwoofer that has two 15-inch drivers, and it's also ported, so make sure that you stay tuned for that. Remember to enjoy your systems. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.